Welcome, friends, to another Wolff Responds. I want to talk to you about Germany, the remarkable developments in Germany that impact Europe and therefore the whole world. Germany again. And not only is it Germany again, but Germany rearming itself again. And if you think this is a story or a movie you've seen before, you're right, you have. Germany's rearmaments have led to major wars, two of the worst in the history of the human race. And Germany was right at the core. And Germany fought them both. And Germany lost them both. You might think, and you'd be partially right, that the Germans aren't going to go in that direction, and they haven't for quite a while. After World War II, between what the winners imposed on Germany and what its own people wanted, it was to have nothing to do with military. But, memory fades and the world changes. And a couple of days ago, the German parliament, far from unanimous, 30%, maybe more, voted against it. But a majority voted to rearm Germany, to spend hundreds of billions of euros, that's the equivalent of hundreds of billions of dollars, by building up its military in a way that no other European country has so far done or indicated its intention of doing. And that will put Germany in a powerful military position, not in relationship to the United States. It'll take them a long time to catch up, if ever. Not in relation to Russia, same reason. Not in relationship to China, same reason. But in relationship to the rest of Europe, who were, of course, the major victims of Germany in World Wars I and II. So what's going on? Part of the story you've heard, because the American media and others around the world carry this simple-minded story. Here's how it goes. The war in Ukraine was a joint effort of the United States and Western Europe, maybe even all of Europe. Then came President Trump, who basically withdrew the United States from an open-ended commitment to Ukraine, the kind that President Biden had repeated, and the kind that all of Europe's leaders, with a few exceptions, also repeat. Mr. Trump said, no more, not doing it. And if the United States, together with Europe, couldn't defeat the Russians in Ukraine, and that's what happened, they couldn't. Russia is winning that war, has already won about a quarter of the land of Ukraine, clearly can win much or all of the rest of it if it wants. It's not clear that it wants. Why should it? But in any case, if the United States withdraws, then it's absurd to imagine. Let me say that again. It's absurd to imagine that Europe could win in Ukraine without the United States when it failed to do so with the United States. That's not a serious idea unless you listen to European politicians. They like to think so. But as I'm going to show you, there are reasons why they talk like that. Realism is not one of them. Okay, so let's ask ourselves the questions. Why are the Germans rearming? And why is the rest of Europe saying nothing so far about it? One of their members is going to be much more militarily powerful than the rest of them. With the history they've all gone through, wow, Wow. Here we go. At the end of World War II, a deal was struck between the United States and Europe. I'm going to go over that deal very briefly, and you'll understand what's happening in Europe. Here was the deal. Europe and the United States faced similar problems at the end of World War II. Both Europe and the United States had gone through a terrible collapse of the capitalist system known as the Great Depression. Really shook both countries. The only thing that finally ended that depression was World War II, from 1940 roughly to 1945. At the end of that war, the great fear in Europe and the United States was that they would fall back into a Great Depression, which is only a few years old at that time, and from which only the war rescued them. So if you bring your troops back home at the end of the war, which they did, and you demobilize them, and you stop producing guns and tanks and all the rest because you don't need them, are you going to be back in the Great Depression? And that scared them. But here's something else that scared them. During the Great Depression, both in Europe and here, socialist and communist parties grew much stronger. Millions of people joined those parties, joined labor unions working with those parties. So in 1945, socialist and communist parties and movements were very strong. Communists got elected to the city council of New York City. Communists were members of Charles de Gaulle's government in France. The Italian Communist Party was the number 2 political party in the country for 25 years after World War II. So employers and the class that represents employers were very upset about the socialist and communist parties inside Europe and America. They were also upset about the Soviet Union. It had been an ally in the war, but now they decided it's the great enemy. They developed the idea, wrong, but they believed it, that the only reason they had socialist and communist parties inside their countries was the influence of the Soviet Union. We had the Red Scare, the McCarthy period. We really purged them out. And we went to work to destroy the unions they worked with. In 1945, a third of American workers were members of unions. Today, it's not even a tenth. What did the Europeans do? They couldn't pull off a purge. The socialists and communists had gotten too big. So here's what they did. If you can't fight them, try to buy them off. And so what the Europeans did is to say to their working classes, you don't need socialism, you don't need communism. We will give you what you think they will give you, but you won't have to struggle, you won't have to fight. Here, watch us, employers, give you 5 weeks of paid vacation every year, which most of Europe has. A free national health service ensuring you for medical care from birth to death, which most of Europe has. Free higher education, which most of Europe has. All kinds of things that Americans can't even dream about, let alone enjoy. But how would they pay for all of that? Here comes the brilliant answer, and it is brilliant. The United States said to its European allies, we want you to be anti-Soviet. We want you to be a bulwark against the Soviet Union. They are our enemy. And we want you to buy off your own internal socialists and communists by giving them very expensive social services. And here's how it's going to be paid for. You're not going to have your own army. No Air Force, no army, a little bit for show. So on holidays, the planes can fly overhead, but no real serious military. We'll take care of that for you. We, the United States, will provide a defense umbrella. So you don't have to spend any money. Not in Scandinavia, not in France or Germany or Britain, or a little showpiece army, but not a real one. We are going to have the biggest one. We've got the nuclear weapons. We've got the intercontinental missiles and all the rest. Great, said the Europeans. The money we save by not having to have a military, we can spend on giving workers 5 weeks paid vacation, giving them a national health, giving them free universities, and so on. We can still have our rich people enjoying a rich lifestyle. We won't have to tax them to provide these social services because we don't have to spend money on defense. The United States said, great. We want to spend on defense. You know why? Because we're scared that at the end of war, 1945, we're going to go back into a depression. Plus, we have our own socialists and communists here. So we are going to do the following. We're going to talk about how the Soviet Union is a terrible, evil empire trying to take us over step by step. And in order to hold them back, we've got to get rid of the socialists and communists here at home, who are just their agents. And we have to have the world's most powerful military. And we're protecting by helping the Europeans. We make sure the fight's over there, not here. Holding back Russia over there, not here. And we will borrow tons of money and we will tax our people and we'll give it all to the military-industrial complex to create the biggest awe-inspiring military the world has ever seen, which they did. The problem was, and here we come to the the decision in Germany. The problem was that all of this happened out of the particular situation in 1945. Anybody who wasn't an idiot then would have understood, and many did, that this special situation wouldn't last. What was special? Every country except the United States was in ruins. Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Japan, wrecked by the war. Not the United States. Other than Pearl Harbor, no bomb fell here. No production was interrupted. No railway lines destroyed. Nothing. We came out of the war stronger than we went in. And that wasn't true for anybody else. But of course, that wouldn't last, that situation. So what do we have now? We have a world that has caught up, recovered from World War II. One of them, the People's Republic of China, also smashed in World War II, has recovered at a speed no one dreamed possible. That's because nobody knows the future. They didn't know it in 45, and they don't know it now. But we have, for the first time in a century, a serious economic competitor of the United States now. What we produce, the Chinese can produce as well or better and cheaper. Electric cars and trucks, yep. Solar panels, yep. Deep sea, artificial intelligence, yep. And so it goes. And the United States is not the dominant player anymore, the way we were. And Mr. Trump has to face it like everybody else. And he's trying to figure out how to do that, like anybody who would be president would have to do. He's much bigger than this or that party or this or that president. And one of the things Mr. Trump did is say, I'm withdrawing from this war, which is costing us an enormous amount and not helping us in any way. Plus, we're losing. So I'm out. The Europeans are stuck. For the last 75 years, they got an enormous benefit by having the United States take care of the defense so they could have the money to give social welfare to their masses and get elected. They were ferociously anti-Russian because that was the big evil all that time. That's how you made it. That's how you got the Americans to help your political career, which the Americans did for every one of those countries. They literally owe their careers to anti-communism and America. So if America withdraws, all they got left was anti-communism, which for them was anti-Russia. That's why you see the German leader just got elected a few weeks ago, hasn't even taken office, immediately violating his commitment when he ran. No more borrowing for the government of Germany. I don't believe in it. Within days of election, he reversed himself and has now passed the biggest borrowing program in German history in order to produce guns. And you know how it's going to be paid for? By not giving the mass of the people what they have gotten used to: the free education, the first-class medical care, the 5 weeks paid vacation. All of those are now going to be attacked to free up the money to work together with the borrowed sums to build up a huge military, which will never frighten Russia, China, or America, but it will terrify all the rest of Europe as soon as there's a leader who wants to use it in that way. Europe better rethink what it is doing and where it is going. If interventions like this strike you as useful, if they are a way of understanding what might otherwise be a collection of facts about this or that, but don't come together to create a meaning so you can understand it, which is what we try to do with these videos. If you find them useful, then please share them with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. That really is why we produce them. And of course, if you can help us with the financial costs of producing and distributing these videos, that would be an enormously helpful contribution as well. Just go to our website and it'll show you how to do that, and know in advance how thankful we are. Thank you.
Oh.